There's tons of different NLEs in the industry, okay? You have, obviously, Adobe Premiere Pro, made by Adobe. You have Avid Media Composer, Sony Vegas, Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and the list goes on. Avid Media Composer is used primarily for film, as I know it, or even reality television because of its really good grouping and syncing and stacking functionalities, right? The way that Avid does media is so good. I mean, it just is what it is. Back in the days, to me, Final Cut was a power horse. Final Cut was a power horse, and you know, everybody knows that Final Cut 7 was the beast, okay? It just really changed the game. I used Final Cut 7 for a while, and then I moved on over to Avid from there. But then you have Premiere Pro. Now, I'm gonna explain a little bit about Premiere Pro and Adobe Suite. When I started editing content back in 1999, I wasn't really doing anything serious. I was editing content and you know, I was learning, okay? But what I did know is back in those days, you didn't have a suite, okay? So Adobe offers what they call the Creative Cloud or the Suite, the Adobe Suite. I remember when they first came out with the Suite, I didn't really like it too much because I felt like they were just trying to, you know, stop the hackers from hacking their programs. They were kind of locking everything up on the cloud and things. But when I started editing and I was working with Adobe Premiere, you had to buy everything individually. So if you wanted to edit, you bought Adobe Premiere. You didn't get Photoshop or you didn't get anything extra. You had those individual products and you had to buy each one of them, and they were very expensive. And so, you know, at that time, I didn't really see a need. I had my own workflow. So what I mean by that is if I wanted to edit in Adobe Premiere and then take it over to Photoshop and do some things in Photoshop and bring it back to Adobe Premiere and go to After Effects, I have to have all those programs separately and then be able to combine them for a finished product. Nowadays, everything's come together where Adobe has dominated the industry because After Effects is so powerful of its motion graphics, and then you have Photoshop, which is very powerful with, you know, photo retouching or manipulating graphics and or manipulating images and things like that, and of course the powerful Illustrator itself. And then you have your web design, because back in the days also, let me just say this, Adobe acquired Macromedia, which Macromedia was a web design company, and all their tools were all based on web design. So I remember when Adobe didn't have any of that, but they bought out Macromedia and bought InDesign, I believe it was Flash, and then it was Fireworks, and all these graphics programs that design websites. They basically bought them, and then they decided to just change the game, because now, not only were they, you know, powerful in the editing part of it because of Adobe Premiere, but they were also powerful in the motion graphics because of the well-known After Effects. And then they got even more powerful when they acquired Macromedia's web design tools. So this was a big thing. This was a big thing for the industry, and as they collectively started bundling their software, it was easier to round trip, because now when you're editing in Premiere, they had this dynamic linking tool, which is very sweet. I mean, dynamic link basically meaning that if I'm on the timeline in Adobe Premiere, I can dip out to After Effects with a dynamic link, do something in After Effects, and it's going to update on the timeline in Premiere. Now we have essential graphics and, you know, character animators, and this Adobe is just, you know, growing immensely. So now it's become one of the, I believe it's one of the industry standards and one of the leaders in the industry now. Even next to Avid Media Composer, you know, it's a slight different. The only thing that I don't agree with when it comes to Media Composers to me struggles in the side of motion graphics, and it's, you know, it struggles in the side of, you know, text, you know, to me, animated text and things like that. But it doesn't matter because it's so powerful when it comes to its media organization tools. So every NLE has its perks. Final Cut also has a motion graphics tool, which is called Motion. And Motion can design and do kind of motion graphics, kind of like After Effects. It's very similar, but not the same. To me, it's not even a comparison. After Effects is, you know, it's just hands down top 10. If you don't own an Apple, you can't have Motion in Final Cut. So you can have PC or Mac and you can still run Adobe. So that's the big thing and the difference between the two, number one. And also, you know, you get what you pay for. And I'm not knocking Apple for their products because Apple has decent products, but it's $200, I think, maybe $250 or something for Final Cut, and you know, another $250 for Motion. Well, for the Adobe Suite, you can either get it monthly or you can outright buy a license for, I think, about $1,100-1,200 or somewhere. But anyway, that's the difference. And then we have other NLEs, like I said, Sony Vegas, which a friend of mine, you know, he swears by Sony Vegas. It's the greatest thing ever since sliced bread. And he cuts on that platform. And then there's also DaVinci Resolve, which from what I understand going to NAB last year, that DaVinci Resolve is now really, really coming up in the industry. And they are so powerful because of their fast editing timeline in association with their color tools. Everybody knows that DaVinci runs the industry in terms of color grading and correcting. So again, if that's your thing, you know, you just have to figure out what NLE works best for you and, you know, play with them all.